Hallo zusammen, 大家好, good morning and good afternoon everyone. Welcome to our Chinese-German dialogue today, which we conduct in English. This is for practical reasons because firstly, we want to save the time of interpreting for a longer discussion, and secondly, there are also participants today who speak neither German nor Chinese. My name is Thomas Wilms, and I'm the German Vice Director of the Chinese-German School for Postgraduate Studies at Tongji University in Shanghai. I also warmly welcome you on behalf of my Chinese directorate partner, Professor Wu Zhehong, and the CDHK team. Our main goal at the CDHK is to train Chinese and German master students and promote academic cooperation between China and Germany. This also includes the training of China and Germany competence, as well as the organization of the Chinese-German dialogues. The idea of the dialogues is to bring students, scholars, interested people from both countries and cultures into conversation so that they can discuss important issues of our time. We are pleased that we can carry out this new series of dialogues with the title Metamorphosis, which is the Greek word for transformation, extended by the letters E and R so that the meaning of the German word sea arises. Transformation of the sea through human influence. That is our topic today. Therefore, the title of Humans and the Sea. The second part of the title is Science Meets Art in the Age of the Anthropocene. Our goal is to bring science and art together to see what they have to say to each other. We are glad that for this reason we could work with the Theater of the Anthropocene, which is located at the Humboldt University in Berlin. What this theater is doing exactly will now be briefly explained by the theater expert and head of the TDA, Dr. Frank Radatz, and his project manager, Vincent Burkhardt, who has studied and speaks Chinese.
Hello, everybody. The Theater of Anthropocene was founded last year at the Humboldt University in order to deal with urgent ecological issues on an aesthetic level. Antje Boetius, the director of the Alfred-Wegener-Institut, and I, as a long-time theater person, embody the collaboration between science and art on a personal level. Thanks to Sabine Kunz, the president of the Humboldt University, it was possible to establish this ambitious theater at the Humboldt University and to establish contacts with scientists too.
This approach is also reflected in the structure of this dialogue format. The presentations by German and Chinese researchers will be specially developed for this format and embedded in artistic contributions from both countries. Very different aesthetic forms will be presented in the course of the project. Today's dialogue event will last approximately 2 hours. Since we are offering it in an online format, for the first time, we had some technical issues and we want to apologize for that. We hope that everything from now on works fine.
Should there be any technical problem, we ask for your patience and apologize in advance. In the meantime, we will fix the problem. Due to these technical uncertainties, we recorded the artistic contributions in advance and show them in videos. So much for the technical framework of the event. Now we come to the content.
In this Chinese-German dialogue, scientists and artists from both countries enter into an exchange on ecological and social issues in the age of the Anthropocene. Characteristic of this new geological age is the end of the stable climate conditions as we know them from the Holocene. This was the climate regime that has ruled for around 10,000 years.
These ecological changes have been caused by the worldwide activities of the human species. At the center of our dialogue series is the element of water, which is an indispensable and highly changeable raw material in life that also has inspired the art and thinking of cultures.
So we are pleased that we were able to win two very renowned researchers as guests for this first Chinese-German dialogue. The marine biologist, polar researcher, and director of the Alfred-Wegener-Instituts, Professor Antje Boetius, and Professor LU Zhibo, who is the Vice Dean of the Environmental Science Department at Tongji University. Professor Boetius will first speak about the role of the ocean for life, with her lecture embedded in a musical reading by the actress Bibiana Beglau and the harpist Amandine Carbuccia.
Then Professor LU Zhibo will give his lecture with the title, The Impact of Humans and the Fragile Ocean. Afterwards, Professor Boetius and Professor Lu will discuss with each other on the basis of the respective presentations.
You can send us your questions via chat function during the two lectures, and we will then make a selection and put the questions to our two experts.
And now, unlike in the program, we are happy to hear three short greeting words. The president of the Humboldt University, Professor Sabine Kunst, would also like to say some words to us. In order to maintain the dialogue character, the greeting of Professor Wu Zhejiang is held partly in German and English, and the greeting of DAD's Secretary General Dr. Dorothea Rüland will be held in German. First, we hear Professor Wu Zhejiang, Vice President of the Tongji University and Director of the Sino-German University. Since Professor Wu is in another important meeting at this moment, he has recorded a short video message for us beforehand, which we would like to play now.
Liebe Kollege Professor Präsident Sabine Kunst, liebe Kollege Dr. Rüland, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, heute findet die Auftaktveranstaltung der Reihe Metamorphosen statt. Bei diesem deutsch-chinesischen Dialog treten Wissenschaftlerinnen und Künstlerinnen beiden Ländern in einen Austausch über ökologische, gesellschaftliche Themen im Zeitalter des Anthropozän, in dem der Menschen zu wichtigsten Einflussfaktor auf der biologische, geologische und auch atmosphärische Prozesse des Erdoberfläche geworden ist. So, das ist so wichtig für beide Länder, but not only for the both land, also for our world is important. As you know, we're working very hard in these points. We try to get the carbon neutral, not only in Europe. We also want this target in China. We're working very hard for this carbon neutral for every city, every town, and every village, and certainly for the China. That will be a big contribution, historical contribution for the whole world. So in this sense, we're working together both from Germany and also from China. We are very important, very proud that the China, especially Tongji University, have a very strong tradition with German culture. We tried in this new center, both for the 4 centers we established under the DRD, we do really very hard for this new balance of the carbon emission for the future. We are very proud that in the last year we got the ranking in the world, the Tongji University as the #1 university as the contribution for the sustainability development in whole China under this over 3,700 universities. We are the number one in China for the sustainability for the nachhaltige Gesellschaft beigetragen. In this ranking, I think it's much more important than any other ranking in the world for the university. Wir wissen, unter Tongji Universität, wir haben diese Deutsch-Chinesische Hochschule, CDH. Wir haben sehr, sehr stark arrangiert bei der AD. Wir werden in die Zukunft weiter sehr hart arbeiten für diese nachhaltige Entwicklung in China, in diese Momente, in dieser Zeit. Wir haben diese Urbanisationsprozess und auch die Industrialisierungsprozess in China, aber wir würden auch diese Carbon Neutral, also diese Balancieren zwischen dieser Umwelt und dieser besseren Gesellschaft zu schaffen. Das in diesem Sinne bin ich ganz, ganz froh, wir beide Seiten, die Wissenschaftlerinnen und auch Künstlerinnen zusammensitzen. Wir arbeiten zusammen. Genauso wie die Tongji, diese Namen, wir haben die Schwierigkeiten. Aber wir sitzen auf derselben Boot, rudern zusammen zu einer besseren Welt. Vielen herzlichen Dank.
We are now looking forward to the second greeting that the Secretary General of the German Academic Exchange Service, Dr. Dorothea Rüland, will speak live from Bonn. Good morning, Dr. Rüland. We warmly welcome you in Bonn.
Lieber Herr Professor Wu, meine sehr geehrten Damen und Herren, ich freue mich, Sie heute ganz herzlich hier aus dem morgendlichen, etwas trüben Bonn in das morgendliche Berlin grüßen zu dürfen und natürlich Sie auch in Shanghai. Es ist schön, dass wir heute zusammen sind und das über Zehntausende von Kilometer Entfernung und auch mit einem erheblichen Zeitunterschied von 6 Stunden. Das alles macht der virtuelle Raum möglich. Fast ist man geneigt zu sagen, erst die Krise macht unser Treffen möglich, denn sie zwingt uns zur Kreativität und neuen Kommunikationswegen. Nicht zufällig bedeutet das chinesische Schriftzeichen für Krise zugleich auch Chance, so ist mir das vermittelt worden, denn der chinesischen Sprache bin ich ja leider nicht mächtig. Deshalb ist es wichtig, in diesen globalen Zeiten die Chancen zu erkennen und gemeinsam zu handeln. Gemeinsamkeit, das ist auch ein zentrales Ziel der deutschen Europäischen Ratspräsidentschaft. Gemeinsam wollen wir gestärkt aus der Krise hervorgehen und die Zukunft gemeinsam gestalten. Deshalb sind Klimaschutz, digitale Souveränität und Europas Verantwortung in der Welt wichtige Schwerpunkte der deutschen EU-Ratspräsidentschaft. Wissenschaft und Forschung spielen bei der Gestaltung der gemeinsamen Zukunft eine herausragende Rolle, denn ihnen kommt eine Pionier- und Mittlerfunktion zu. Sei es bei der Entwicklung eines Impfstoffes gegen das Coronavirus, worauf wir alle sehnsüchtig warten, dem Engagement gegen den Klimawandel oder der Erforschung schwarzer Löcher oder eben auch der Erforschung der Weltmeere. Wir wissen, nur in gemeinsamen internationalen Netzwerken können wir die großen Themen der Zukunft bewältigen. Nie zuvor hatte Wissenschaft deshalb in unseren Gesellschaften einen so hohen Stellenwert wie heute. Denn nur wenn wir es jetzt schaffen, die grenzüberschreitenden Herausforderungen kooperativ und nachhaltig anzugehen, haben wir eine Chance, zukünftigen Generationen einen halbwegs bewohnbaren Planeten zu hinterlassen. Die notwendigen Bedingungen für gelingende Kooperation sind dabei die Freiheit von Wissenschaft und Forschung, die Balance zwischen fairer Partnerschaft und Konkurrenz sowie die Überwindung systembedingter Hindernisse. Ebenso wichtig für die friedliche Zukunftsgestaltung sind das gegenseitige Verstehen und die Verständigung unserer Gesellschaften. Besonders dieses Ziel verfolgt der Deutsche Akademische Austauschdienst, der seit seiner Gründung im Jahre 1925 fast 2,5 Millionen Akademikerinnen und Akademiker im In- und Ausland gefördert hat. Hierzu möchten wir auch weiterhin einen wichtigen Beitrag leisten, indem wir Studierende und Wissenschaftlerinnen weltweit fördern und miteinander vernetzen, zwischen verschiedenen Akteuren und Interessen vermitteln und Impulse für die Internationalisierung und globale Verantwortung setzen. Zum letzten Punkt gehört auch die Internationalisierung der Hochschulbildung im digitalen Wandel. Hier stellen sich für uns durch die derzeitige Krise ganz neue Fragen, wie zum Beispiel, wie wird internationale Kooperation, der weltweite Austausch nach Covid-19 aussehen? Welche neuen Wege eröffnen digitale Formate im Hinblick auf Mobilität, Zusammenarbeit und beim lebenslangen Lernen? Die heutige Online-Veranstaltung könnte erste Antworten auf diese Fragen geben. Es freut mich daher sehr, dass dieser chinesisch-deutsche Dialog in Kooperation mit der Tongji Universität stattfindet, die 1907 als Deutsche Medizinhochschule gegründet wurde und die seitdem eine lange Geschichte mit. Zu dieser Erfolgsgeschichte gehören auch die Gründung der Chinesisch-Deutschen Hochschule und das 22-jährige Bestehen des Chinesisch-Deutschen Hochschulkollegs. Gemeinsam mit der Chinesisch-Deutschen Hochschule für angewandte Wissenschaften wurde die seit vielen Jahren vom DAD geförderte Chinesisch-Deutsche Cluster kürzlich vom Auswärtigen Amt und vom Bundesministerium für Bildung und Forschung als vorbildliches und weiterhin förderungswürdiges Kooperationsprojekt in Asien benannt. Besonders durch die Vermittlung von Deutschland- und China-Kompetenz wird unter dem Dach der Chinesisch-Deutschen Hochschule ein wichtiger Beitrag zum gegenseitigen Verstehen und zur dauerhaften Völkerverständigung geleistet. Auch der heutige Dialog mit dem Titel von Mensch und Meer dient diesem Ziel der Verständigung, der Vernetzung und vielleicht sogar der künftigen Kooperation. Es ist deshalb schön und ich bedanke mich ganz herzlich, dass so namhafte Wissenschaftler und Wissenschaftlerinnen wie Frau Professor Antje Boetius und Herr Professor LU Zhibo heute hier einen Vortrag aus ihrem Fachgebiet halten und anschließend miteinander sowie mit dem Publikum ins Gespräch kommen. Besonders faszinierend finde ich bei der heutigen Veranstaltung die Kombination von Naturwissenschaft, Geisteswissenschaft und Kunst. Zunehmend brauchen wir diese interdisziplinären Dialoge, die Kommunikation in die Gesellschaft hinein und mit ihr. Kunst kann hier wichtige Brücken schlagen und Perspektiven bieten, was und gerade heute in Covid-Zeiten besonders fehlt. Ich möchte mich daher für die Idee und Umsetzung dieser innovativen und spannenden Art der Wissenschaftskommunikation bei den Organisatoren bedanken. Einerseits beim CDHK der Tongji Universität und andererseits beim Theater des Anthropozän der Humboldt-Universität. Ebenso danken möchte ich allen beteiligten Künstlern und der Shanghaier Theaterakademie für ihre Unterstützung. Und nicht zuletzt bei Herrn Willems, der offensichtlich diesen ganzen Prozess auf den Weg gebracht hat. Ich wünsche uns einen informativen und inspirierenden Vormittag in Deutschland und einen ebensolchen Nachmittag in Shanghai. Vielen Dank und herzliche Grüße.
Thank you very much. And now we hear the third video message, which comes from the president of the Humboldt University, who also made the Theater of Anthropocene possible, Professor Sabine Kunst.
Dear Professor Wu Zigiang, dear Mr. Willems, dear Dorothea Rüland, dear Mr. Radatz, hello everyone, good day and good afternoon. The digital dialogue we are going to enjoy in the next minutes reflects the strong relationship between our university and Chinese partners. The Humboldt-Universität looks back on a long history and tradition of academic cooperation with China. It currently maintains partnerships with more than 10 different universities throughout China, spanning a variety of academic fields, reaching from law, education to German studies, business, and many others. Among these cooperation projects with Chinese universities, the Humboldt-Universität maintains especially fruitful relation with Tongji University since 2011. Beside student exchange programs, both universities cooperate with the University of Constance in the double-degree master program, Comparative Studies of German, European, and Chinese Law. While academic cooperation has resulted in interdisciplinary workshops, bringing together Chinese and German researchers of varied fields such as architecture, urban planning, German studies, and art. Therefore, I'm glad that both universities are now again working together. Many thanks to Dorothea Rüland and the German Academic Exchange Service, which are supporting these events. Before the performances will start, I would like to give more context to the theater of Anthropocene. Dialogue and knowledge transfer are of central importance to the Humboldt-Universität, both traditional and current. Wilhelm und Alexander von Humboldt, the mentors of our alma mater, were already committed to a close connection between teaching and research in the middle of society. When the university was founded, Alexander von Humboldt's legendary Kosmos lectures took place in the heart of Berlin in today's Gorki Theater. According to Alexander von Humboldt, an essential part of understanding nature is the knowledge that everything is connected with everything. Therefore, it takes the knowledge of many sciences, from geography to ethnology, to truly understand nature. Only an intact bond between man and nature, interwoven from knowledge and experience, but also empathy and emotion, can be the basis of a sustainable civilization. In the Alexander von Humboldt year 2019, the Humboldt theme, the bond between man and nature, was discussed in youth through readings and performances. The interaction between science and art enabled new approaches and opened up a different range of possibilities that are productive and inspiring for both art and science. Within the framework of the current excellence strategy, the topics of science communication and knowledge transfer are a priority in the agenda of the Humboldt University in the Berlin University Alliance. With the university-wide strategy and communication process, Open Humboldt, which we launched this year, the Humboldt University is now actively promoting its opening up to society. With a focus on multi-directional exchange between science, society, and culture, we will contribute to an important and new way to the university's third mission. The Theater des Anthropozän plays an important role for that. But for now, I wish you an inspiring event and a joyful discussion.
Now we see a short choreography of Zhang Zhaoxun, danced by Zhang Zhishong, who are both students of the Shanghai Theatre Academy. Mr. Zhang dances to the song Gruß vom Meere, Greetings from the Sea, by Karl Löwe, singing by Josef Greindl, who was a German opera singer and lived from 1912 to 1993. The water in the video is the Huangpu River at the North Bund in Shanghai, and the beach is located in Qingdao.
Sei mir gegrüßt in deiner Pracht, schönen Hand. Und denk ich meiner auch nicht mehr, so denk ich ihrer noch. Und sende über Feld und Meer ihre tausend Grüße noch. Ihre tausend Grüße noch.
Next, we see the lecture of Professor Antje Boetius combined with a musical reading. Professor Boetius researches and teaches marine biology as a professor at the University of Bremen and is director of the Alfred-Wegener-Instituts for Polar and Marine Research. Antje Boetius has received numerous prizes for her scientific research, including the Leibniz Prize and the German Environment Prize. She is a committed campaigner for a responsible climate policy.
She is accompanied by the French harpist Amandine Carbuccia, who has played as a principal harpist with the Bremen Philharmonic since 2015 and with well-known German orchestras, such as the Munich Philharmonic. Amandine Carbuccia has won numerous international competitions. In 2009, she won the 3rd Concours International de Nice, and in 2012, the International Harp Competition in Utrecht.
Bibiane Beglau, who speaks the lyrics, is one of the most successful German theater and film actresses. She became internationally known for a leading role in Volker Schlöndorff's film The Silence After the Shot, for which she was awarded the Silver Bear for Best Acting at the Berlin Film Festival in 2000 and was nominated for the European Film Prize. Bibiane Beglau received the Adolf Grimme Prize in 2007 for her performance in the film Unter dem Eis, Under the Ice. The magazine Theater Heute voted her the Best Actress of 2014, and in 2015, she received the German Theater Award Faust for her role as Mephisto.
Hölderlin, Hyperion. O selige Natur, ich weiß nicht, wie mir geschiehet, wenn ich mein Auge erhebe vor deiner Schöne, aber alle Lust des Himmels ist in den Tränen, die ich weine vor dir, der Geliebte vor der Geliebten. Mein ganzes Wesen verstummt und lauscht, wenn die zarte Welle der Luft mir um die Brust spielt. Verloren ins weite Blau blick ich oft hinauf an den Äther und hinein ins heilige Meer, und mir ist, als öffnet ein verwandter Geist mir die Arme, als löste der Schmerz der Einsamkeit sich auf ins Leben der Gottheit. Eins zu sein mit allem, das ist Leben der Gottheit. Das ist der Himmel der Menschen. Eins zu sein mit allem, was lebt. In seliger Selbstvergessenheit, wiederzukehren ins All der Natur, das ist der Gipfel der Gedanken und Freuden, das ist die heilige Bergeshöhe, der Ort der ewigen Ruhe, wo der Mittag seine Schwüle und der Donner seine Stimme verliert und das kochende Meer der Woge des Kornfelds gleicht. Eins zu sein mit allem, was lebt. Mit diesem Worte legt die Tugend den zürnenden Harnisch, der Geist des Menschen den Zepter weg und alle Gedanken schwinden vor dem Bilde der ewig einigen Welt, wie die Regeln des ringenden Künstlers vor seiner Urania. Und das eherne Schicksal entsagt der Herrschaft und aus dem Bunde der Wesen schwindet der Tod. Und Unzertrennlichkeit und ewige Jugend beseligt, verschönert die Welt.
This talk is about the ocean's function for life. I'm Antje Boetius, and I'm a polar and marine researcher. And I'm going to discuss with you what fascinates me so much about the oceans, that it is this vast reservoir for life. When I was a kid, I couldn't get enough of ocean explorers' books, and I read Jules Verne, and I found it so amazing the moment when Captain Nemo explains to a professor of marine science that we should really be in that immense desert, he called it, where man is never lonely, for man feels life stirring on all sides. And so I was fascinated as a kid that one day, as a grown-up, I could go and dive into that ocean and explore this vast unknown forms of life. But let's first think about how Earth is actually ocean. I mean, 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by water, by deep ocean, on average 3.8 kilometers deep. And this ocean gives life to us. Planet Earth is still the only planet that has life on it as far as we know, and we have to thank the oceans for that. We can calculate that 90% of the habitable space on Earth is actually oceans. And this ocean takes up the heat from the atmosphere. It distributes heat. It keeps us warm on the continents. It cools where it needs to cool. It distributes water full of nutrients and oxygens. And the oceans even does more for us. So the oceans is teeming with life, and it has been throughout the history of planet Earth. Early on, when single cells developed, early on, the ocean was filled with small photosynthetic cells that learned how to use sunlight for energy, how to split water and provide oxygen for all life to breathe. These tiny little organisms, the single cells, today they make as much oxygen as all trees together. So when you take a breath, then half of the oxygen that you breathe comes from the ocean. Now, as scientists, we were eager to find out how much is unexplored, how much is unknown. And so we did a big study to calculate what do we know about the oceans and what don't we know. And we found out that for maybe the ridges in the oceans, we know about 0.1%. But when we go to the seafloor of the vast ocean deserts, we haven't even explored 0.01%. And then if we go to the deep water zone, where all the life lives between, let's say, 500 meters depth where the sunlight goes away and the full ocean depth, in this giant zone, we know nothing. It's not even a tiny bit of a per mil of knowledge that we have for that ocean. And it's our ocean on Earth. We are here in a museum, in the Natural History Museum of Berlin, and here we can see the reservoir of life. This museum is full of samples, of ocean life, from times where people were fascinated and tried to get their hands on life, but this life is now stuck in little jars. And so the big difference, what we still have to do today, is make that life come to life. Because once you dive to the oceans, once you really get to these organisms, then you see them alive, and you don't see them destroyed and destructed from fishing gear. Still, here in Germany, we have to thank the early explorers of the 19th century because they got this first knowledge out. The ocean isn't a desert, the ocean isn't dead. It is teeming with life down to the deepest depths. So, me as a deep sea researcher, today I have advanced technologies. I can go and dive in a submersible, I can go work with robots, and I can go and visit the life that I want to understand. And I show you just one evidence of such fantastic life that we don't know much of. The anglerfish. It's a fish which is quite amazing. It's a female fish. The men are basically invisible. They are tiny little dwarf ships, and they have to find the mothership. They have to join the mothership and then fertilize it so that we have more anglerfish. This anglerfish is capable of being bioluminescent, and when we dive to it, when we explore it, we understand how different fish behave at ocean depths. This fish is fully illuminated. In German, we call what the fish can do, we have for it this beautiful name, Meeresleuchten.
Aus des Meeres dunklen Tiefen stieg die Venus still empor, als die Nachtigallen riefen in dem Hain, den sie erkor. Und zum Spiegel voll Verlangen glätteten die Wogen sich, um ihr Bild noch aufzufangen, da sie selbst auf ewig wich. Lächelnd gönnt sie dem feuchten Element den letzten Blick. Davon blieb dem Meer sein Leuchten bis auf diesen Tag zurück. Friedrich Hebbel, ein Nordseegedicht. Das heißt Meeresleuchten.
So this beautiful illumination of life that hides in the dark, where there is no photo, not for plants to grow, not for animals to see. Life makes light and shines light to find each other and to communicate. And so we are counting and counting, and today we know the oceans host about 10 million species of animals that we don't know. Some of them are here in the museum and they haven't been identified till today. It's so many different species. And then me as a microbiologist, I want to know about small cells, single cell life. And you know, when I take a spoonful of ocean sediments, then I can find 1 billion cells inside that one spoon. And when I try to find out how many different species of single cell life in that spoon, I can count 2,000 new species per tablespoon. Then I take my ship, I go a little bit further away, I take another spoon and I find another 2,000 species that no one knows about. And so we have to understand today that within planet Earth, we have a second planet that we still have to discover. But the problem is that at the times when we are discovering, when we are describing the first landscapes, you know, for us today as ocean scientists, we are kind of Alexander von Humboldt type beings. We dive, we discover landscapes, we don't understand where they are coming from. We look at giant mountains, we find giant mountains that we have never placed on a map before. Myself, I have a record of 10 mountains that I could find in the deep sea. One of them almost 5,000 meters in height. Try to do that on land. So see, at these times when we explore the ocean landscape, we have to understand that we are slower in finding out and doing research than in changing the oceans. And we should be so thankful for the oceans. We still have to lift the biggest secret on Earth, and this is how life began. We think it began in the deep sea, in the deep oceans, around hydrothermal vents that tell a different story of life as we have it on land. Now, the reservoir of life, I think, is the greatest gift mankind has. But we take more. We need more resources from the oceans. And this is a conflict of interest, we can call it that way, because we go to the oceans for fish and seafood. We go to the oceans for waste disposal, to lay cables, telecommunication cables, to drill for gas and oil, for the global shipping, and also, meanwhile, to find new medicine, natural products. So for decades, for centuries, we have looked to the ocean as a vast reservoir of riches. We have not thought so much about a time that may come, that is coming, where our behavior on Earth changes everything, including the oceans, including the deep sea. So climate change, the toxification of the oceans, changes everything for life in the oceans, and we don't know much about it. One of the principles that politicians and scientists and economists think about is, would we change the way we deal with the oceans if we think of it more economically? If we would think about what is at stake, what will we lose? If we give a price, a cost to the ocean, would that help us? Personally, I have difficulties. I have so much love for the life and so much respect for that vast ocean space that to me it's unthinkable that I have to sit down and figure out how much worth is the ocean. But it may help. It may help to speak about the costs, the true costs of ocean change. When sea level rises causes extreme flooding, when the heat waves of the oceans destroy the coral reefs, change our fisheries, change what we can take from the oceans. When all of that together, the extreme events, all of that what climate change brings about, will make 1 billion people lose their home and it forces them to seek for new homes. We could account for that. We could cost that. Maybe that's the solution, that we get more respect for the oceans by understanding what it costs us when we lose the giant ocean space to something that we don't like, that we don't want to have. So the big question that my co-presenter, Professor Lu, will talk about is, how fragile is the ocean actually? In my mind, having studied the ocean for 35 years, I have the feeling the question is not how fragile is the ocean, the question is how fragile are we? So this map, with which I'm ending here, shows you the problem that we have. 62% of the oceans is our common heritage to mankind. 38% of the sea is owned by nations, and each nation has to find its own balance, its own way of dealing with nature. But 50% of all people, 3.5 billion people, live around the world's coast. And their lives and our lives are all connected by the oceans. So we need to think, how fragile is the ocean? How fragile are we?
Das Schiff von Bertolt Brecht. Durch die klaren Wasser schwimmend vieler Meere löst ich schaukelnd mich von Ziel und Schwere, mit den Haien ziehend unter rotem Mond. Seit mein Holz fault und die Segel schlissen, seit die Seile modern, die am Strand mich rissen, ist entfernter mir und bleicher auch mein Horizont. Und seit jener Hinblick und mich diesen Wassern die entfernten Himmel ließen, fühle ich tief, dass ich vergehen soll. Seit ich wusste, ohne mich zu wehren, dass ich untergehen soll in diesen Meeren, ließ ich mich den Wassern ohne Groll. Und die Wasser kamen, und sie schwemmten viele Tiere in mich, und in fremden Wänden freundeten sich Tier und Tier. Einst fiel Himmel durch die morsche Decke, und sie kannten sich in jeder Ecke, und die Haie blieben gut in mir. Und im 4. Monde schwammen Algen in mein Holz und grünten in den Balken. Mein Gesicht ward anders noch einmal. Grün und wehend in den Eingeweiden fuhr ich langsam, ohne viel zu leiden, schwer mit Mond und Pflanze, Hai und Wal. Möw und Algen war ich Ruhestätte, schuldlos immer, dass ich sie nicht rette. Wenn ich sinke, bin ich schwer und voll. Jetzt, im 8. Monde, rinnen Wasser häufiger in mich. Mein Gesicht wird blasser, und ich bitte, dass es enden soll. Fremde Fischer sagten aus, sie sahen etwas nahen, das verschwamm beim Nahen. Eine Insel? Ein verkommenes Floß? Etwas fuhr, schwimmend von Möwenkoten, voll von Algen, Wasser, Mond und Totem, stumm und dick auf den erbleichten Himmel los. Der Mensch und das Meer. Freier Mensch, immer wirst du das Meer lieben. Das Meer ist dein Spiegel. Du beschaust deine Seele im endlosen Anrollen seiner Wogen. Und dein Geist ist kein weniger bitterer Abgrund. Du liebst es, in die Tiefe deines Bildes zu tauchen. Du umarmst es mit Augen und Armen. Und dein Herz vergisst seine eigene Unruhe beim Lärm dieser unzähmbaren wilden Klage. Beide seid ihr dunkel und verschwiegen. Mensch, nie hat jemand deine Abgründe ausgelotet. Meer, keiner kennt deine verborgenen Schätze. So bedacht seid ihr darauf, euer Geheimnis zu hüten. Und doch bekämpft ihr euch seit unzählbaren Jahren ohne Reue und Erbarmen. So heftig liebt ihr das Gemetzel und den Tod, o ew'ge Kämpfer, o unversöhnliche Brüder. Charles Baudelaire, Fleur de Mal, 1857, Die Blume des Bösen. Übersetzung Henning Boetius.
We are now looking forward to the second lecture by Professor LU Zhibo, who will speak on the subject of the impact of humans on the fragile ocean. Professor Lu is director of the Institute for Environmental Planning and Management at Tongji University, which is one of the leading universities in this field in China and also worldwide. His main research interests include polar environmental impact assessment, sustainable water management, and eco-urban planning. Professor Lu has a long relationship with Germany, as he was a visiting scientist in Duisburg-Essen in 2005 and at the Technical University of Munich in 2008. Dear Professor Lu, the screen is yours.
Thank you, everyone. Maybe I'm the only one to have an online presentation. So we just enjoy the perfect performance from German side. And I will introduce a little bit about our work and to introduce the human impact on the fragile ocean. And we also give a name, but we don't have poem. We only have the name to call it freedom or checklist to think about this question. So we are produced this presentation by me and my partner, Mr. Jensen, and many photos and video you will see in the following is by him. And he is also a professional diver. And my PhD students, Dr. Yu Li, who has donated for some research part. So I expect that you can like it.
Professor Lu, can you hear me?
Yes.
Mrs.
Can you see the video?
Yeah, it's a little bit slow, but it is possible, yeah. In which depth was this taken, the photo? Could you say something about it?
Yes, of course. So maybe it depends on the internet connection. We will continue with some photos and to have more images for you, because this video is and maybe take some capacity of the internet. So my topic will focus on the human impact on the Arctic Ocean. And this is, we just find the research findings to have the most cited hot issues in Arctic Ocean, also to the other oceans caused by the human activities. Like we know a lot of about the climate change and also some pollutants from the human activities. So this is the most cited 23 human-related issues about the environment impact on the oceans. So you will find the last one or the newest one is about the microplastic pollutions, what is our topic today. And we are doing some research. I think AWE is the same institute who in Germany is involved in this kind of latest research to discuss about the microplastic or marine litter issues in the oceans. So this scientific thinking is from this 2014 and 2004, and the paper in Science called that the lost at sea. Where is all the plastic? So this is the new questions or new thinking about the human activities in these decades. So where are they? We have some findings by this is the potential for the Arctic regions, because even in the remote area like in Arctic and Antarctic, we have the human impact footprint on the creatures. This is the photos by the microplastic pieces in Arctic we found by our Norwegian colleagues. And these color dots are about the pieces we found about the human beings in the Arctic region and their donations to the marine litter. And also we think that all the oceans are connected to each other. So when you are living in this, in your hometown, and maybe you are donated some not so good things, some garbages, some microplastic issues to the ocean. And then they will go to the remote area like the Arctic Ocean and the Antarctic. So this also we found in around the Arctic for the sea ice, and we find this inside the sea ice also from the ocean current and even from the deep sea. There are many fishing lines, films, pellets we used every day, and some rigid fragments also. And this is from the deep sea, and we find that the high quantities of microplastic even in the Arctic deep sea sediments. We think that in the sediments we not only have the creatures, and we also have the human impact in the deep ocean. So human impact on the ocean you can find everywhere. And this is some photos taken by my colleagues, and to introduce some phenomena now existing in our ocean. This is, we gave the name as plastic ocean. We take this photo in Philippines. And this is the super jumbo. We have some diving and we have some enjoyment in the beach, but we still donate some plastic to the ocean. This we call the new blanket, and in the small movie, you also can see some lovely creatures to living with these plastics. And this also, the candy, the package materials for our stuffs will go to the ocean and to everywhere. And this is the plastic dunks with these fibers, these wraps, and we also find this with the strips we use every day. This is like we call the shackless. It is actually a plastic lid with the bottled water, and we drinking the bottled water, and on the top of the bottled water, normally we have this kind of plastic lid. And we also have this like the wrappers with the plastic materials, and they cannot distribute, and they can still in the sediment, even in the deep sea. We also have some plastic sheet or films that is within the seahorse. So this we are thinking a question that we are, the creatures in the ocean is facing the problem of freedom or shackless. This is all the things we have in the ocean. And this is also the fish with the plastic skateboard, and the sense of the seahorse like a tail, but it's a plastic one. And this one, we have the spaceship by the fish, but it's a plastic sheet also. And maybe some creatures like this is their toys, but it's dangerous to the creators for these plastic issues, because it's not only they can stuck themselves, but also they have some additives on the plastic issues. And this also the big wrap, and with these creatures, if they are stuck inside, they cannot survive. And most of these kind of bags, wraps. So what we are doing is to find this scientific evidence of the microplastic issues, and to scientifically evaluate the status of the microplastic pollution in the remote areas in Arctic and in Antarctic. And we are doing this scientific work to announce to the public that we should do something to protect our environment. So this is what we do in the Svalbard, in North Norway, in the Arctic issues, and we take the scientific vessels, and we take the samples for the surface water to detect the microplastic pieces inside the surface water, even in the high North Arctic, in more than above the 80 degrees north. So we are thinking about these issues, and we think all the issues about the plastic is from two bases. One is ocean-based sources, and the second is land-based. And every one of us maybe donate our something in plastic to the ocean. So this is what we do in the Svalbard, in New Ålesund, to have this monitoring. And we think that this is the distribution of the microplastic particles in the ocean. And we can find that the North Atlantic Ocean currents are bring some plastic particles from the low altitude to the high north, to the Svalbard and the New Ålesund. So we are connected. They are not locally distributed microplastic particles, but are consumed by other peoples in the low or middle latitude regions, and then taken by the ocean to the high north or even to the Antarctic. So we draw some pictures from our colleague in Norway that we think now the plastic issues are not only in the ocean currents, but they can distribute and transport by the air currents in the more small particles, and they can come to the sediments, even sinking down, and to the creatures, and they are from the wastewater discharge, landfill, and many other ways. So they are everywhere to detect, but until now, they are not so have the international standard to obey the input of the microplastic to the ocean. So we take also to the Antarctic, we take the scientific vessels from Shanghai to the Antarctic, and we take samples to detect around the big value of the space, how it is happened to the microplastic in the oceans. So what we take is, this is our samplers in the ocean and on the boat. Then we take the water columns and we detect the pieces of the microplastic. So we take this work and we record, and we are ongoing of this research work to detect how many pieces of particles in different locations of the ocean and what are they. So until now, as we know that our microplastic issues are everywhere, and we should get more concern about it, to think about its risk to the ocean creatures. And we should also make an announcement to our public that we should give more attention to these issues and to protect the ocean from all of you. So this is what we want to introduce to all of you about our thinking of the scientific issues, how to connect with the arts or the public announcement in this way. So many thanks to the invitation for my presentation here, and also thank you for the institution support my research work here. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Professor Lu. Frank, I think you are on the turn.
Ja, Vincent oder? Es ist wohl Yeah, okay.
Yeah, actually, I think you were supposed to continue, but I can also take your part. Like, we'd want to thank Professor Lu very much for this very interesting and for me also very shocking presentation. And yeah, do you want to continue, Frank?
No, at this point we would start with the discussion. Perhaps Antje Boetius and Professor Lu can have a little conversation, and later then we want to include the audience. This is the planning. Do you have any question perhaps for Mr. Lu, Antje?
Yeah, thank you very much. You have correctly mentioned the size of the problem, and also what is so important to convey that everyone, really everyone on Earth, contributes to one kind or the other to the plastics problem. And while I think the public is very aware of the littering of the oceans by now, it is really difficult for people to understand how in our everyday uses, in our industrial productivity, but also the individual behavior, we are causing this problem. And in Europe, this is, makes me sometimes very sad. People think it is, or there's the saying, it's a few big rivers from which all the dirt comes, and it's China and India, but it's nonsense. It is most, and that's what our researchers find, most of the litter comes still, especially in the north and the Arctic, from Europe, and a big part comes from the fibers we use for fisheries. A big part comes from washing our clothes, from the productions of carpets and all kinds of materials. So to solve the problem, we would really have to start at the source of the problem, and that is really the materials we are using. So I'd be interested in Professor Lu's opinion. What is the movement that you, how do you discuss with industry and politicians what they could do to fix the problem?
So what we are doing now is first to give the scientific data to the public and to the government. Not means we just to give the announcement, because we needed, as a scientist, we needed to give the truth. So at least now in the international level, we don't have the standard method, even for the monitoring, even for the sampling, even for the size of the microplastic and how to evaluate the risk. So this is the first thing we, as scientists, we want to do, to give the public the right information, what is happening to the ocean in the issues. So marine litter is not the same as the microplastic, it's different. As the public, they maybe not know very well how about the difference between the big pieces and the small pieces. But just as the dust in the air, the big dust and the small particles are different to the health risk to human beings. It's the same that the plastic in different size, they have the different health risk to the ocean. So we first needed to more data availability to let the public know it is really happen. So what we are doing is to take more samples to introduce these findings to more public and political decisions to let them know, okay, it's happening like this. And then to find the solutions from the sources and how to change the production style or consume style. Just as Boetius mentioned that in China, we also do the investigation that the washing machine is the most important source from all the families, because you wash your clothes every day. So the fibers actually takes around 70% of the particles in the ocean, because they are transport more easily than others. So for the fibers, it's different styles, and even for different companies, they have different kinds of fibers. So we should let the people know that all of you are donated this microplastic to the environment, not only several of you. So it's true. So then we need more cooperation from our scientific parts and also from the industrial. Even we do many education programs to our children to show them when you are washing your clothes at the classroom, then we will take them to the microscope and they will find their own plastics at the classroom. Then they know, okay, washing machine or the clothes is one of the source of the plastic. So what we will do as a university or as a scientist, we want to give more scientific data, and then we will give more education to our young generation to let them know what we call the human impact, the real impact to the ocean. Ocean is very huge and very strong to everyone, but it's still very fragile. You can see the movie. This movie taken by my partner. It's a real world, not we take in the museum. It's taken in the real ocean. So we will let us to introduce this to all the public peoples and the decision makers. Thank you.
Yeah, that was excellent to show, and there's very few photography as you have shown it from your partner, where you can show in vivo, so in the environment, the interaction between the organisms and the plastic. So that must, can you say something about the method, how he has managed? Because it is very difficult to provide such photography.
It's a pity maybe my partner is not online because of the technical issues, but actually we are doing these things for several years. So we can connect to each other to AWI, that we can do more common things like this. And we now take some photos from the most in the Asia, in Philippines, or in the South China, or several times to the even Japanese Sea Ocean. So next time we can, we have some planning to take some this photographers in polar regions in Norway or in Antarctic, but we now still on planning. So we can exchange the technical for this kind of very amazing, I think, photographers and the videos to the young child, to my son also. He is lovely to these small fishes, but yes, when you see the small fishes, you will think that, okay, the fish is catch the microplastic. So it's very shocking to them, and it's amazing educational materials. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Boetius.
Thank you.
So, well, I encourage you, Mr. Liu, Professor Liu, and Professor Boetius to continue your dialogue. Maybe you, Professor Liu, have a question for Professor Boetius. And I also want to ask the audience if you have any kind of questions either to Professor Boetius or to Professor Liu. Please just write them in the chat and then we will select them.
Perhaps I may have a question for Professor Liu. What will happen when this process of microplastic in the sea will not be regulated? What will happen with the sea in 30 years or 50 years? What do you think?
So for microplastic issues, as we know now, they have two risks. One is from the physical risks that many creatures will swallow this microplastic to their stomach, even for some birds or fishes, and they will get destroyed their systems. This is one thing. And another thing is that the microplastic itself, like absorbents, they can absorb many pollutants, including the POPs and the heavy metals. So they like a ball to absorb more pollutants inside this microplastic. So it will increase the health risk to the creatures. But it depends on how it happened. And now for our scientific evaluation, it is not get the common idea to think that, okay, one big piece is more dangerous than 10 small pieces, or 1 gram is more dangerous than 1 ton. So this is not agreed yet. So to evaluate the realistic risk of the microplastic issues to the ocean, it's on the very beginning. I think it's not so scientific way to see that it is a very huge risk or not. But as a environmental concern, a new information about this is very important, because it really happened to the creatures, but not to say that, okay, it will happen to which extent it's like other pollutants, but it's more complicated because they are not like the chemical pollutants. It's a single chemical pollutants like mercury or cadmium. They are one single elements. But for plastic itself, they have thousands of kinds of plastic. Every day we have the new material. Okay, we now have some like nano materials. Yes, maybe more nanoparticles happen. So what will happen if we use more advanced materials? So this is a very interesting topic that from the evaluation of the risk, we should keep some scientific way still on the way. That's my opinion.
Yeah, that you explained that very well. The problem is also that to understand what it does to the different life forms and different life stages of organisms, one would really have to experiment with the marine life and understand, for example, does it harm their immune system? Does it cause inflammation? Does it keeps them from feeding properly? So worldwide, these experiments are beginning, but they're very difficult to do because you have to do them in the environment of the organisms, and you have to, because so few of the ocean life can actually be studied in laboratories or in aquaria. So that's a part of research that is just beginning to really understand the effects, the physiological effects of the plastics on the different life forms. So the ability to photograph and study in the environment, as you showed, is of great importance to better understand what it all will do. So there is a question. I think, yeah, Vincent, that's your role,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, maybe the first question, was that answered already by Jiayu Weng, who asked about the methods to prevent the pollution nowadays and in the future. And you've written answer to that in the chat, Mr. Professor Lu. Do you want to say a few more words about this, or is the question answered already?
So until now, that we think the most effective way to prevent this kind of pollution caused by the plastic or marine litters, we think is the source reduction from the industrial, for the fishing industry, and even for, I like said that the wastewater pollution prevention in the wastewater treatment plants, and in your family also you change some style of the to use the plastic issues less, or reuse them, maybe not to use only once, then to save the amount of the source reduction. It's more effective until now. So in the future, maybe we can find some more ways for the new things to replace some kinds of plastic, but maybe they cause the new risk. So the people are get advanced and invent something, and then find some risk at the same time. That's always we are on the way. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, we are discussing with chemical industry, because the problem is that some of the what we call plastics in all of the diversity that Mr. Lu has mentioned, very often we don't actually need a material that lasts for hundreds of years if we use a material that we use only once. And so the proposition is with industry, can we revert to materials like fiber from wood or fiber from chitin? So that's what the crustaceans produce, or other kinds of materials that last maybe for days and weeks, that can be slowly dissolved by water eventually, and especially can be dissolved by microbes in the sea. Microbes in the sea are equipped to deal with we call it refractory, so long-lasting materials, but they are not equipped to deal with a big proportion of the plastics we are utilizing, even though we don't need the material to last for hundreds of years. And so that's a matter of debate. And that's where we come back to what I mentioned before in the lecture. For some reason, to use oil as a source for a variety of non-degradable plastics, the connection is it's so very cheap. It's the cheapest production of materials we can find, but only because as humans, we make it so cheap. We could make it very expensive to make plastics, non-degradable plastics from oil. It's our choice. And so in all of the debate of what's the solution, I think economical questions play an important role in the future. And also, of course, the regulation simply by forbidding single-use materials to be made of a material that lasts for hundreds and thousands of years.
Thank you. There is another question by Stefan Christ, and maybe Stefan, you want to just raise the question yourself so we can make this dialogue a little bit more interactive.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Okay, great. First thing has worked. Yeah, I was wondering because I'm very intrigued by your attempt to combine the sciences and the arts, and especially theater, it seems. And I very much enjoyed the performances and also the combinations of music and readings and the scientific input we got. But I'm wondering from the scientist's view, you talked a little bit about education, also about the emotional impact science has to make, but I'm wondering specifically, what do you think? Is there a way that theater can help your work? In which way do you see it as helpful in your work? Is it just for better communication? Is there something else it can give to you?
Do you want to start, Mr. LU? Or? Okay. So so you have already mentioned a couple of reasons. I think we both relied on photography, for example, on showing the interaction between animals and life forms with pollutants, or just to make everyone feel that the ocean is not just a physical environment, it is full of life, and we humans tend to deal better or to care more if it matters to life rather than just the physical nature. That's the beginning of understanding. That's the way that we are providing knowledge, that it should also touch you and it should make you think about the future. And in that regard, I find relying on the arts who are able to change perspectives, to make you feel closer, for example, to a landscape or an animal or the future, because it allows you to travel or to realize how different futures could be. That makes the scientific message stronger and more conveyable. But to me, it goes much beyond this. I turn to literature and theater to understand or make people understand that it is not new, it's not a new debate, and it's not a new finding, that humans have to be aware of the balance of their deeds, the balance of their resource uses with the environment. And so particularly in the 19th century, so as a response to industrial revolution, we have all these fantastic texts and arts where you see that in the artist's mind, they are fully aware of a fight between nature and mankind. And so to make that clear to the young generation who think they are the first generation ever to suffer from environmental destruction, it can create a moment of strengthening, a moment of making us more apt, more interactive, and strengthen the debate if we understand it could be just an intrinsic issue of humans in their in their interaction with the environment. So that's why I like to dive into the past of literature and theater to find these moments and highlight them. Today's kids often don't read anymore, and even many scientists don't read. And so if we combine scientific knowledge and these texts, many are surprised that they find their own communication reflected in communications of the arts from 200 years ago.
Yeah, thank you for this long answer. Do you want to add something, Professor Lu? Or it's okay. Then I would ask Frank to have a look at the clock because
maybe Frank can say something about it.
Yeah, I will say some sentence. I think if you watch Professor Lu or Antje Boetius, they like very much these little creatures in the deep sea. We are not divers, we don't know them. And I think the theater have the possibility to bring you that you are touched by this phenomenon. And perhaps we can only defend what we love. And this means we must have a contact which is not only rational, which is an emotional access. And this is the main point, I think, because we can only make good art or good thinking when we are confronting with the real problems of the world. And now we learn to change our mind. We are on a mission. Yes, we must learn very, very quick that this ocean is not unendlich, in
eternal.
Vincent, vielleicht kannst du eternal.
Endless,
Yes.
endless.
That we have to be careful with our Earth planet. And this is very new. For 500 years ago, we don't have to think about this. The Earth is very strong for us humans, but now it's fragile. And the Earth can live without us, but we can live without Earth. This is a problem, from my point. And that theater can help, of course, since you don't have to make theater. What for?
Yeah, very passionate.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, we have to look at the clock.
Yeah.
Perhaps we
Yeah,
are
exactly.
reaching
Like
our
there's, as far as I see, no more questions in the chat. And yeah, as you said, Frank, I think the clock is also ticking. So
Can I
yeah.
ask one more question? So
Well, of course.
I was wondering, because what I find interesting is, of course, to have the cultures interact, and the arts so language and arts are, of course, a big divide between nations in a way. The science not so. The science that Professor Lu does, or we use the exact same thinking methods, data. So there is a unity in our language and understanding and our method. So I was wondering particularly, or I would like to know more, if there is a tradition in Chinese art forms to, the one thing that I probably know a little bit about is to show harmony and balance and beauty, aesthetics, but where is there a tradition? Can you say a few words about where do you address problems? Where do you address the negativity, the dystopy, hate, or what's your approach? Where does that happen, and how do you use art in Chinese culture to document issues between humanity and nature or humankind?
In history of China, we now, I think, most use the paintings or drawings to let people know, from the kids to the older people, that what did happen, and maybe some pollutants and like microplastic can change it to some like very ugly things to touch the human beings. So I think most popular approach we used is by the drawings and the paintings in different styles to the different age of the people, because the drawings we can be recognized by most of the people, and some very big issues we maybe have some like the poems or the songs, but very little. So most popular approaches to let people know in China about the situations is normally the paintings and the drawings, like the advertisement, or we now use the short movies, like the 1 minute movies. It's more popular to the young generation. Yeah, that's my understanding.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
are there any cooperations between China and Germany in this field of polar science or whatever? Do you have there?
Absolutely. So on Monday, our big North Pole expedition ends. And so there we had, I think on all legs, we had Chinese scientists involved. Unfortunately, China was a big partner, and in theory should have also helped with the exchange. But then due to Corona, we couldn't use the icebreaker of China. There's a fantastic icebreaker. We have a big exchange with various Chinese universities because, of course, China is a nation very much turned to the oceans and very much caring for the question of the fate of the polar seas, the fate of seas around. And so there's, and I have several co-workers, several people at the Polar Research Institute of Germany that go forth and back, and we are doing a lot in terms of climate modeling, but also the type of science that Professor LU has mentioned, so pollution studies, oceanography, biology, a whole list of interactions.
Oh, great. Mm-hmm. Perfect.
So we also welcome to have some cooperation under the framework of CDHK with AWI.
That would be good.
And the Tongji.
Absolutely. So Tongji, I have to look up where we interact. We, of course, have a very strong affiliation with Tsingtao because there is, the Ocean University and everything. But I have to look into what we exactly do already with Tongji. But of course, we meet on Svalbard. China has a station on Svalbard as we do. And so there is interaction also to study Kongsfjord, as you have shown. And that's where we regularly meet.
Good to hear.
Yeah, that would be a very great outcome of this event today, that maybe some new cooperations are made possible. So, if there is not any more question, I would say that we from the Theater of the Anthropocene thank our speakers today very much. Thank you for attending this event. We were very happy to have you. And also thanks to the audience. Big sorry once again for the little starting problems with the Zoom meeting. But we have recorded the last part of this meeting, and we will put a record of the meeting on different websites so that the people who were not able to participate today, they have the chance to see what we discussed today.
Dialogue with the title The Matrix of Seafaring and the Philosophy of Water is expected to take place around November 14th, same time, same place. And we will then look at the topic of the sea from a literary and philosophical perspective. And so we wish you all the best, a nice day and a nice evening in China. Kind regards and stay healthy. That is the most important. And we close this Chinese-German dialogue with a traditional Chinese sea song presented by the students of the Shanghai Theater Academy, the Department of Science of Theater Science. So.
坐在门前的矮墙上，一遍遍。
this was it for today. Thank you again, everyone. Good night, goodbye, Zaijian, and tschüss.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. See you on the 14th November again. And you see, we end with a very optimistic song. We are not in a tragic mood today. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Beautiful song. Thank you very much. Lifts the spirits.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.